Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Sean Buchanan at Equal Starts. Another episode and another esteemed guest, Mr. Boswell, Adrian Boswell. I met him a year ago at a food buyer event from a guy that's been on here before, Colin Mouldy. He does the Spill the Beans food source media stuff.
Mm.
And Mr. Boswell was kind enough to give me some pointers on how to uplift my jerk season and maybe get some retailers in. So today he's going to be talking about how that business in general, especially in fast moving consumer goods, how we can elevate as a community, as business people, and move forward. Could you
Yeah, for
introduce
sure.
yourself, Adrian, please?
Yeah, Adrian Boswell, over 20 years in the premium food retail industry. Um, and thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me on.
That's why it's a pleasure.
Yeah, no, I mean, thanks for inviting me. Not everybody does, and I'll do the best I can to share as much information as possible to support whoever may be watching and help them on their journey and while I'm sharing experiences as well. So and big up what you guys are doing. What you're doing is fantastic. I've got a lot of time, particularly for CICs. I know there's quite a lot of people doing CICs and coming up at the moment, but I think a people first approach is um, always beneficial. And I think it's why I've been able to be able to achieve what I have achieved, because I've always put people first. So always happy to give time to causes that align with my
Mm.
values and my ethos. So yeah.
You see, starting off your years of experience, what made you get into the food buying industry? Because I don't hear anyone really from our community really saying I'm going to make a career out of that.
Yeah, bro, it's um just moments, you know. I was fortunate enough to have a very strong foundation in my environment when I grew up. And what I mean by that is I'm the youngest of five boys.
Okay.
Um, had both my parents in the house, both married parents from a Caribbean background. And we know the stats and statistics, all that sort of stuff. So I was fortunate, and I knew that coming up with the people that I came up with, a lot of my peer group didn't have a relationship with their father, coming up in single parent homes. So I come from good stock. But long story short, to answer your question, the moment that sort of triggered everything that mom and dad and all the brothers used to keep telling me was when, well, she's my wife now. She wasn't my wife at the time, but when she said she was pregnant, and we was having our first son, so it was time to grow up.
Okay.
Um, so I was about 18, 19 years old. Um, I needed to find a full-time job, and the only job I could find full-time was as a fishmonger. So I started there really. I just,
Okay.
I just took the job because I was like, need to get paid. You know,
Mm.
I've got a family
Cool.
to provide for. So, um, and that's really where it started.
So how do you develop from a fishmonger to actually a food buyer? That's a serious career jump. Did it
Uh,
take a long, was it a long process?
um, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that obviously I've been in the industry for, as I said, plus 20 years. As a buyer, probably, yeah, 50% as in within the world of buying, because there's different roles. So the way it worked was I was a fishmonger for about 3.5 years. Um, what really happened was I was actually studying. Um, they made you do MVQs and all this sort of stuff, and they wanted to make some changes, which meant that I wouldn't be able to complete my MVQ. So that was 11 months in. So I was like, look, you've made me do this for 11 months. I've put in all this time and effort and this work. And with 1 month to go, you're telling me I won't be able to complete it because you made a decision. So it was like, look, you need to find me something which is going to allow me to complete my course. That was all I was really on. Because I didn't,
Okay.
me and the education system, we had a difference of opinion.
Mm.
So for me at that moment, seeing all my brothers go to university and all that sort of stuff and not having any credentials or paperwork behind me, that became quite important. I'm like, I've put a lot of time into this. So at the time, there was just a role going as like a retail admin, and my vibe wasn't even really about the job. My vibe was just, will this allow me to finish my course? And
Mm.
they were like, yeah. I said, I'll do it. And just as so it happens, it worked out better for the family because, um, it was Monday to Friday. Obviously, when you're doing retail and you're on the shop floor, you've got to do weekends and different hours. Um, but the role, Monday to Friday, uh, standard hours. It was much better for the family because I had all my weekends off. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. And from there, did that for about another sort of 2 to 3 years. And then what happened actually is there was another change at the top, and then all of the office roles became head office. So there used to be a divide where you'd have the head office, and then you'd have people who worked for retail, but in an office environment. And I fell under retail at that time. But then there was a organizational structure change, and I moved into head office. And then shortly after that, my role became more in the merchandising. So obviously, what merchandising is pretty much supply chain and logistics. So I was an allocator again for sort of like 2, 3 years. Moved into assistant merchandising, and then became a merchandiser. And at that time, the merchandiser would work very closely with the buyer in a sense, because obviously the buyer wants to buy this and wants to make it all load of money. And my job as a merchandiser is to crunch the numbers, look at a spreadsheet. Actually, you know what, those volumes are too high. This is going to cause wastage, blah, 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 blah. So I had a really good relationship with my buyer at the time. And one day he turned to me and he said, I think you'd be good at buying. And I was like,
Okay. That's serious.
yeah, I was like, he's like, what do you think? I was like, I mean, okay, I mean, let's figure it out. We can, if there's an opportunity for me there, because I think also as well, I was getting tired of the merchandising because a lot of spreadsheets and numbers, and it's cool, but again, as I was alluding to earlier, my vibe is more from a perspective of people and buying sort of, well, from what I saw from buying in terms of what he did and working closely with him and being all the meetings that he allowed me to attend with him. I was like, yeah, there's a lot of conversation, there's a lot of talking, there's a lot of it's almost quite psychological to a certain degree. And I was like, I
Mm.
think I could enjoy this. So, when he said that to me, I was like, okay, well, show me what the opportunity looks like. I'll throw my hat in the ring and let's see where we go from there. Threw my hat in the ring. But I had to start again from the beginning. So
Okay.
I was
Did that mean a drop
buyer's
in the
assistant.
salary?
Say that again.
Did that mean a drop in the salary when you had to start again
No,
with
do you know what? No, do you know what? Again, I was again very fortunate, very blessed. Like I'm very, very well aware of the blessings, and
mm.
whoever's guiding me. I've got a fair idea who it may be, but whoever's guiding me and
Mm.
providing me the opportunities is, did a grand job. Um,
Mm.
and so I didn't get an increase at that point, but I didn't lose anything. So it was just a
Okay.
change.
Okay.
But at the same time, it was like I went into buyer's assistant, but it was more like assistant buyer, but just because of the nature of some of the politics and all that good stuff. So I was like, look. And again, I guess I approached it all because I never really wanted to be in this world. So it was just like, opportunities are arising. All right, cool. Let's give it a go. So the official title was buyer's assistant for a while. Did that for 2 or 3 years. Did okay, I guess. Became assistant buyer, and then into buyer, and then it started to develop in terms of the type of buying I did. So predominantly, again, all fresh food. So my bread and butter is seafood, fish, smoked salmon, caviar, truffles, all these types of things. There was a time when foie gras was acceptable, and then cheese, deli, charcuterie, olives, pasta, biltong, all these types of things. And then into fresh juices, dairy, cream, milk, all this stuff started to get added in underneath my remit. Um, and then the most recent, it would be the health and wellness, as in
Okay.
supplements and proteins and all these types of things. But then the other part of my role would be to start managing concessions. So effectively, that's when the company you work for just becomes a landlord, and you hire companies to come in and run their operation
Okay.
and
Okay. Like
negotiate. So,
outsourcing,
say that again.
like outsourcing, subcontracting.
Kind of, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, if you think about, similar to how you might have it in like a shopping center and these types of things where you got all of these high street brands under one roof, but obviously, when you walk into the shop, the name that you walk into isn't any of specific to those brands. So then it just my remit just started to widen and widen, and yeah, it's been an interesting journey, very interesting, and it's not like I say, it's not something I didn't even know the role existed for a long time.
Mm.
Coming from where we come from, it's like these are the sort of jobs that we have no idea about.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah. Yeah,
You
definitely. I
understand?
don't think it comes
So
with school or college. That's not what they recommend to you.
there you
That's what I
go.
always
This is
found that sneaking with the
yeah.
niche roles that are behind the scenes.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those, and
Yeah.
so I guess really it was just really big, between like I say, those guiding me in the universe and providing me with the opportunities, and then the rest of it was me being open to the opportunities. And I guess because of the mindset I had and the approach I had, which was just like, you know, I got to provide for my family. So if I can do that, and there's different ways to do that, and there's different ways for me to learn them, yeah, let's go and let's figure it out. Let's see where it leads.
Mm.
Um,
You see, when you had to source the like, say, the foodstuffs, the cheeses, the wines, the salmon, the fish, was you looking for
mm.
specific qualities? They're kind of a remit that you look
Oh
for.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's funny. We joke about this a lot, and particularly, I'll always have the cheese industry, the artisanal cheese industry, and those guys were really fundamental in me being able to continue on the path because, like, they're real people. They're different. They're different. Like, it was a whole learning curve, but I think there was something quite unique and new about me, which intrigued them, and vice versa. So we always joke about it, and I remember sort of coming into it. I was like a standard, supermarket block cheddar and a bit of Philadelphia, man. That was my vibe. And then you just exploded into this world of, thousands of artisanal cheeses across different categories. And there was, I think there was one moment which really sort of changed the way I think. And we went to, so the same buyer that got me into buying, he used to do this thing every Christmas where you would you you'd go round to some of the producers. In this instance, it was a Stilton producer in Shropshire,
Mhm.
and obviously blue cheese. And you know our vibe, it's like that's mold, isn't it? Like that's
Yeah.
what's going on there, isn't it? So he's taking me through the process in terms of how they produce it and everything, and we inject it with holes and then let the oxygen get in, and talking about humidities and all these sorts of things, and then allow the mold to grow. And I'm in the background like, you allow them all to go. You guys are doing this on purpose. Like, and
Yeah.
no word of a lie. I think and the reason why I say that was the moment because their reaction was just, it's everything I needed in that moment. They were laughing and cracked up, and that bit of banter came in, that almost football banter, and
Yeah.
yeah, we know you lot don't like blue cheese and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, why would you eat mold? Like,
Yeah,
who's doing that? And
no, I
like all
always
this
found that odd as
conversation,
well. Mm.
100%. But the most profound moment about what happened after that was after the jokes and the banter is they started to school me. They started to school me on the history of this cheese. They started to school me on how to taste this cheese and why it was created this way. And it was almost like a moment of embracing and saying, okay, cool, you don't know. But because I was authentic in my approach, going, why are you guys doing, like, what is this all
Mm.
about? It almost disarmed them to go, okay, let's bring him on the journey and see how he reacts to that. And that set off a whole, I would say, in the wider food arena, the reputation I have probably started from that moment within cheese. And I started doing a lot of cheese judging. And it allowed me to travel not just up and
Okay.
down the country, but across the world, Europe, Switzerland, Italy, Spain, France. And it was just, like going to places that I would never have thought I would, yeah, places I ain't even heard of. And I'm out here
Mm.
eating cheese with these people. So to answer your question, absolutely, there is um a benchmark in terms of quality of product and the type of cheese that we're used to buying in the supermarket. Once you understand flavor profile and once you understand how to articulate what you're tasting and
Hmm.
why you're tasting it and understanding how it should taste, it opens up a whole different world. And again, that's my vibe is you know, for me personally, a lot of learning I learn best through experience. So to be able to taste all these different cheeses, then go back and taste a block cheddar, and then go, nah, that's not,
Yeah.
and
That's out to
it,
scratch.
Mate,
Because I'm a connoisseur.
mate,
Mm,
well, yeah, but I tell you what it did to the food budget was difficult, man, because those cheeses ain't cheap. So, but
yeah.
I got it's like how can I, how can I go home now knowing that this is this and understanding that, and it's so yeah, all of that came into play. But yeah, it's been a fantastic experience, and like I say, it opened me up to a world which never knew existed, and there's elements of it which are cool, and there's elements of it which are challenging. But
Mm,
and again, I say to choose people because they're real people. They're people. I mean, some of these guys are like crazy passionate scientists. They are, the way they talk about cheese is, yeah, you wouldn't believe it.
mm,
But they're real people, and you can have honest and open conversations with them, and that almost allowed me to continue. That allowed me to be myself. I never had to change up the way I speak. I never had to do the Queen's English and all that good stuff. I could just talk and just be myself. And yeah, I felt a lot of comfort in the cheese community. So I'll shout them out today. We like to shout out.
mm. So, like food science. So, did you have to do anything in terms of your training with food science and that when around this?
Yeah, a lot of my training was on the job. There was a company that do a lot of training specifically in the world of like cheese and charcuterie areas that I was focusing on. So yeah, there was a lot of training in terms of, understanding the product, understanding, where it comes from, understanding, for instance, understanding what part of the pig a Parma ham comes from,
Mm,
understanding what part of the pig pancetta comes from, understanding what type of milk you make for brie, what type of what and understanding the difference between using pasteurized milk and unpasteurized milk and
mm,
the different seasons of cheeses and all of this sort of stuff. And interesting little facts like um, depending on the weather and how good the grass has been is
mm,
going to dictate how good the milk will be, which is
mm.
then going to dictate how good the cheese is going to taste. So it's all those little things that you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, the
Because
details.
fundamentally,
Yeah,
it's
I'm
not
familiar.
just
Not
yeah,
obviously not with that sector, but I'm familiar with the details of
yeah,
where
yeah,
where the real
100%.
connoisseurs and sommeliers are like, oh, they can say with the wine, they know what part of the region of the country comes from. I said, how
Yeah,
can you tell that from just?
yeah,
I said, yeah,
yeah.
that's like genius stuff to me
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. It's
Mm.
yeah, it's mind blowing. The wine. I mean, never talk to me about wine. I'll never get that. Like that one is that's a different level. You got to be spot on with that. But yeah, it's So there was that level of training and training on the job, but then also because of how I work, you're allowed to have a little bit of creativity within that as well, and I think that also helps. I think it also helps when you're given the opportunity to bring yourself into the role. Um, and again, fortunate and blessed that I've had the opportunity to be provided with that because I appreciate not everybody gets provided that. So
Mhm.
uh,
Now that you're in the fast moving consumer goods kind of sector, what is it that you actually look for? Because a lot of the people that I speak to, when they're trying to break into an industry and they're getting a lot of knockbacks by trying to cold contact on LinkedIn or getting a list of
mhm,
companies that they
mhm.
know, like food manufacturers, retailers, like food
Yeah.
brands that represent them. They said, "I'll get the cold shoulder." Never seem to get through, and there's not much events from, like you say, from people from our background we could go to until I actually met Colin Mouldy from my
Mhm.
wife. So
Yeah.
I said, and he obviously from there I said, I can't believe he's only done one or two events and he's able to get these kind of quality and pedigree of people
Mhm,
out.
mhm.
I said, I could never dream of doing that. So I have to give a salute to Mr. Mouldy because see, I would never
Yeah,
met
for
him.
sure. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm,
He's doing
mm,
his thing, and I like what he's doing, what he's trying to, and what he's trying to achieve, and trying to bring people up. And again, it just needs time, and it needs more of us in the space, and to build these communities so we can start sharing and having conversations. But to answer your question, like, what do I look for? It's I understand how difficult it is for brands, and I think we should start at the beginning. This we
mm.
could be a while here, Sean. We
Yeah,
could be.
that's all right.
I think we have to start at the beginning, and I think, in my experience, what I've understood and what I've noticed, and this isn't just even reserved to our community, but we'll focus on our community at certain points because there are fundamentally some differences in terms of how quickly you can scale your business and all this good stuff. So the first thing is The one thing I've noticed about food is, and I'm not going to, I don't like to generalize, so I won't say it's the lowest, but it has a very low barrier to entry. And my understanding on that is the majority of people on the planet have a relationship with food in some shape or form. So we all have an understanding of what we like, what we think tastes good, what flavors work well together, what product we can create. And then it's fairly easy to go and create that product. Let's say, whatever it may be, to a certain degree, there's certain things you can make in your kitchen and, you know,
Cool.
start, build a certain amount, and you might give it to families, bring it to parties and whatnot. And then everybody likes what you taste. Now, my view on that is most people in your circle will probably like what you've created because what you've created from a flavor, texture, whatever perspective, probably has elements of the environment you was raised in. So that's the first thing. So then there's a lot of people who will make things and say, my mum said this is great, my brothers and all my family and friends said this is great, cool. The difficult part now is to then go, okay, so how am I going to make this into a product that I can sell into retailers? And that's when it starts to explode. And the reason why that's so important as that low barrier of entry is because you get a variety of different people from a variety of different walks of life um, entering the food production scene. Okay. So, I've met with people who've given up jobs as a lawyer. I've given people who used to
Yeah.
work in medicine, people who used to, um, people that used to work for the police, people, just a variety of different people. So again, the scope of buying and particularly in food is very different. It's not, let's say, like fashion. It's quite specific. Like I might like to wear a certain type of jeans, doesn't mean I want to go and make
Then of
jeans.
course,
So
yeah.
that's not for everybody.
Mm.
But for some reason, food kind of feels this way. So I tend to look for, um, I tend to try and speak with people. Again, people-centered is my approach. And I think, again, this is, again, same way that we met. Again, the guy that got me into buying, his whole vibe was to do this job effectively, you have to be a field agent. So that was my come up in the game. So I had to be out and about. I had to be speaking with people. I needed to understand, where their heads were at and these types of things. And what astonishes me the most is that there's not a lot of people in the food industry that are thinking 5 years ahead because food is very tough. So when I ask a lot of people, what's your vision for this brand? Where do you see it? The answers are quite generic. I want to put it here and then I want to go nationwide and in the supermarkets. I say, okay, well, that's great. But now there needs to be this understanding of, okay, if you want to go into a high-end retailer, there's different requirements, different tone of voice, different look and feel that you may need to get there. If you want to go into the supermarkets now, well, then that's a whole different set of criteria. Well, and it's starting to merge, get closer, but that's a whole different set of criteria in terms of what you need to do to have your product listed with the supermarkets. So, for instance, there's no supermarket that I'm aware of. Maybe something's changed, and if there's any supermarket players listening, feel free to correct me. But my understanding is, unless your product is produced in a BRC accredited facility, which is the British Retail Consortium, I believe. Um, if it's not produced in a facility that's accredited by the BRC, just don't even try. Just stop until you can get that sorted. That's not necessarily the case with, some of smaller independents and department stores.
Yeah,
And then what you start to say that again.
I found that as well. The
Yeah, well, there you
different
go. And
criteria was
then
the one that shocked me when I came into it.
there you go. 100%. But then you understand, they go, oh, okay, well, a lot of these people don't know this. And then you're going, well, how come they don't know this?
Mm.
What's really going on? So I, again, coming from that place of people, um, I was always happy to, as again, like, as we met, it's like if I've got the time and someone wants to ask a question, then I'll answer it to the best of my ability to help you on your path. But I do look for people who understand where they want their brand to be in 5 years' time. I do understand, brands who understand the category that they're playing in. Excuse me. Who are the brands that are doing it well, who are the brands that are not doing it so well, you know. But there's got to be a clear vision of of the path you're trying to take. If you know that I just want to go into the supermarkets and um, be nationwide and all these types of things, that's cool, that's fine. So but that's going to set you on a different path. That's going to set you on a path of probably if you ain't got your own production facility, which most people don't have, that means you're going to have to go and find a manufacturer and someone who can product and pack, and then you have to
Mm.
worry about storage and all this good
Mhm,
stuff.
definitely. I've been through that. Mm.
So that's I always start um people and product. Product's got to be right first, and if the product's right, then I try and understand the people, see if they if because look, the flip side is my time is limited, and
Yeah, of course.
trying to be as respectful as possible. Is this person going to be easy to work with, or is it going to cost me more time and energy? And I have to I have to figure those things out because I've got lots of other things on my plate as well. So yeah, people and product, massive. And then again, going back to the compliance side of it, on the product, the labeling, the nutritionals, the shelf life testing. It's a beast. It's a lot. It's a lot. I work in the food. I wouldn't start a food business.
Uh,
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
see,
And again, it comes back to that part we were saying in terms of how it's different for certain communities because now that's when contacts become very important.
important, yeah, of course.
Very important. Even if you might have the greatest product and it might be able to scale and it's a great idea, but actually, do you have the contact to someone who knows a very good, reliable manufacturer who's trustworthy?
Mm.
And then, do you have access to people who can introduce you to people who may want to invest? I mean, I know there's lots of other things and crowdfunding and stuff now, so it's better than it used to be. But
There's
then
still
that's
big
when
barriers though. Still a
say
lot
that
of
again.
barriers. Still a lot of barriers though.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Look,
I would never
there's
have
always
found a way in if it weren't for
yeah,
my,
100%.
I think David
Absolutely.
Law at Panavasia. I used to just
Mm,
buy king prawn salt and chili from him,
mm,
and he used to watch me run in the park and said, "Oh, you live local?" And
mm,
he said, "Oh, he said, what do you think of Levi Roots?" I said, "Yeah, I think it's quite nice, but I think I can do better." And
mm,
he said, "Really?" He said, "Have you got anything like that?" I said, "Fun enough." I said, I've been working on a marinade with my mother." So he said, "Let me have a
mm,
try of it." So this is a chance for me after about a year of me trying to at work on my
mm,
lunch break. Oh, fine food buys. No, no, everyone got a season. Where do
mm,
you work? Says in houses.
mm,
Nah, nah. So I said, geez, how's people getting this disheartening for about a year? But then
mm,
this fella just said, "Oh, listen, give me 1K and I introduced
mm,
him to a food manufacturer." I said, "Where?"
mm.
"Portsmouth." So I thought he was thinking, but to be fair, he delivered like Ronseal.
Okay.
So when that happened now, they said, "All right, we're thinking." I wasn't really happy with the way it tasted compared to my kitchen one. So I said, "Oh, I can't think this." I said,
Yeah.
"I've been laughed at in my community." But then they referred me because I wasn't able to be either they wanted a bigger like kind of product in terms of
Yeah.
volumes. They said otherwise it's not worth the time. So
Mm,
they referred me to a kind of medium one called Chili Mash
mm.
Company, and they took it up. I said, "Yeah, it's still
Okay.
not like the kitchen one, but it's closer." So I said, "I'll give
Mm,
it a run." They put me in front of a food subscription company called Flaming Licks.
okay.
I thought, my word, that's when I thought, you know what, I've cracked the code. As they were taking like 500 jars from me at a time. They were,
Yeah.
and I got a
Nice.
couple of been there, done a couple of pop-up shops for where I was
Nice.
working in facilities
Yeah.
because I used to work in the city doing like the air conditioning. They used to always have these
Okay.
kind of pop-up shops for like little independent kind of connoisseurs of like food and that little dips, biscuits, thing like that.
Okay.
And I said, "I've got things." I said, "What, you engineer? You do that as well?" I said, "Yeah, I'm trying to have multiple streams of income." So from my workplace,
That's
they said
good.
they have in the kitchen. So I thought, yeah. All of a sudden now, I had problem with the manufacturer making my website, and then I said I went to buy the commercial recipe,
Mm,
but that can't work. So that started to put a spanner in the works. So
mm,
I had to go back to just selling on my site and selling to people that I know through like as an artisan product. After I was for about 18 months, I said, "My goodness, I'm making
mm,
my week's wages in like one order."
mm.
I said, "Yeah, I don't have to think." But when I tried to go retailers and I said, "Listen, your food compliance is ridiculous. Where's your
Yeah.
traffic lights? Where's these things?" I said, "I
Yeah.
thought the manufacturer had that covered because they had South." They said, "South is no good here." Like he said, BRC. So I
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
where's this come from?" It's totally ignorant of it. Even
No,
though
but no, I wouldn't. I mean, it's hard. I think it's harsh to ignorance because I I was very surprised when I started doing the rounds and started going out and speaking to them. I was very surprised that a lot of people didn't know this information. And then that's when I realized that because the barrier to entry is quite low, and because when you're dealing with independents who aren't necessarily getting checked by the Food Standards Agency that much, you can get away with certain things. If the product's good and the labeling is decent, the pricing's right, you can get away with if the nutritionals ain't formatted in the right way and all that sort of stuff. But then, yeah, I was so surprised that that information wasn't widely available to brands. And then what you then understand is who the real gatekeepers are. Because it's funny,
Mm.
a lot of people is like, everyone's talking about buyers, and get it into retail and stuff. But for a lot of brands who have the aspirations of getting into the supermarket, the gatekeepers are the manufacturers. Because unless you
Okay.
got
I remember you saying that. I remember you saying that. I
yeah,
always thought it's the
unless
food
you
buyers.
oh, and look, unless you got your own production facility, who's got their own production facility? It doesn't happen often, yeah. But and what happens is because you know these manufacturers, if we like a lot of the products that you buy off the shelf are coming from the same people. I mean, there's a lot of products that you'll find in Sainsbury's and Tesco's, and they've been produced by the same person, just slightly different recipe. It's all these little things because there's only a handful of manufacturers who have BRC and have facilities big enough to be able to, to pack and to hold and to store and then
Funny enough, you see
it's
when
an
you say
interesting.
that, do you ever
So like,
recommend any to people that say they're struggling? Would you ever, because obviously you've got the years of experience, so would you ever say, listen, I know this manufacturer, this one, you should try them. They might be able to help you depending on what you're doing.
first of all, I'd ask what your situation is because that's the other thing as well. It's like um, I always like to ask brands, particularly when they get in the food game, it's like, how on a scale of 1 to 10, how much are you willing to suffer for
Mm,
this product and this brand that you're creating? And at a push, I would say if it's lower than 7.5,
Jesus.
then I think you need to think about it. And the reason why I say that is because you've got to look at um, you've got to look at how competitive the food industry is. And it's easy to get caught up in self in terms of look at what I created and it's great and it might be great and it might look great. But I say this a lot. It's like you're coming to me. I don't have any space on the shelf currently. So what you're asking me to do is to take someone out and replace them with you.
Mm,
Okay, that's fine. Well, why should I do that? Because you don't know how well this brand is doing.
mm, mm,
You don't know exactly what I'm being KPI'd against. You don't even know if I'm looking for this type of product. So it's one thing to go out there and look for buyers because it feels like, and the other thing it feels like to me is just like a lot of brands come in and they look at the buyers and go, they can get me launched in this shop and it's going to take me to the promised land, and that's not 9 times out of 10. That's not really the case. A lot of the brands that do well are brands who have rolled up their sleeves and a year or two been out there building slowly and smallly, and you might not have seen it and all. And yeah, you've got the other brands like the Perfect Teds of this world, who you get the Stephen Bartlett investment. Yeah, you get those kinds, but you know there are still other brands who have been you know in the dark, just year refining, finding the product, taking the feedback, adjusting it while they're still small, and it's not um financially, it's not such a financial risk to if something's gone wrong with the packaging on a product and you've got 10,000 of them, now you've got a problem because that's just money tied up. So
mm,
again, that essence of building small, similar to what you were saying, going out, doing something that's like, yeah, I can manage 500 units a week, build, stack, build, stack, reinvest. Get some data. What are people liking? What are they saying? What are they not
mm,
doing? And getting in front of the customer as well. And I always think, things like pop-ups and farmer markets are great. And trade shows, I mean, trade shows are very expensive now as well. But these things are very great because you are now getting that first-hand feedback from people, and that's invaluable. It's
mm,
invaluable. It's no, a lot of people will come, they've made a product, and then they want my opinion. And I'm like, well, who else have you tried it on?
Yeah,
It's
true.
like my opinion is my opinion. I don't know with best will in the world. I know what I think tastes good, and in certain areas, I think I'm quite strong. but then it's branding, it's pricing, there's a whole package that's got to come with it. And we always try and launch things which we believe are going to do well for sure, but we just don't know. But if you haven't even done any due diligence on your side and expecting me to just pick up your product, put it on the shelf, and job done, you've made it to the
Mm.
promised land. There's this, seems to be this romantic view of building a food product and watching it sell and why it's so great. So it's a very, very tough industry to get in. And that's why I was really happy to speak to people just to let them know and just say, look, are you sure? Because it's not easy.
So yes. So going forward, if when it comes to compliance,
Mm,
would you say they have to research that first before they even start? Because like I said, some of the lists that you gave me, I wasn't aware of it, even though I've been doing it. Well, I've been trying to sell my seasoning for 6 years, 7 years,
mm,
and some of the
mm.
stuff was like esoteric. It was like gobbledygook to me. I said, this is the barriers that you need to get into these kind of places.
Yeah, again, it goes back to my point of how much of your vision have you mapped out?
To be fair, I used to go to British Library beforehand, like
Yeah.
research on the African Caribbean market, marinades, condiments, and I thought I had it down.
Yeah, but again, but again, having it down to a certain
Mm,
degree for where you're at might be fine. And this is where people have it's difficult to say because if you don't have the knowledge, then you probably don't know where you are. And then you get back to the point of, well, how can I speak to someone who can steer me on the right path? And then you get the horror stories about some consultants who've taken the money but haven't really given you credible information. So again, it starts to get messy. But what I would say is if if you're in a position where you don't have the funding and you don't have the access to a manufacturer, which upfront costs, and you ain't got nowhere to store it and all these types of things. If that's not the case, then it feels like to me um, that a slower approach would be more beneficial. And what I mean by a slower approach is there's nothing wrong with, you know, to your point, producing 500 units and saying, before I dream of selling 10,000 units, can I sell 500 units? Can I sell 50 units? If I can sell 50 units, okay, now can I sell 100 units? Okay, now I can sell 100 units. Now, how can I sell 150 units? I'm just saying that as an example. But I think when you're doing it that way, that low barrier to entry is still okay. And yes, along the way, you'll start meeting with people and talking to people. And then it's like, maybe you need to tweak this a bit and tweak that a bit. And then, you've only done 100 units. So the next 100 units ain't going to be too difficult to tweak and change as you go and you're developing it as you go. Um, do you know, do you know what? It doesn't even really take research, but you can just go and look for a similar product in the supermarket and look at and what I mean by that is look at the back of pack information. That's a template for you to use. So
okay.
do you understand what I'm saying? It's
Mm,
that simple. But again, if nobody's not thinking that way, because again, rightfully so, maybe you don't, or maybe you've been able to have a conversation with someone who can make you see it that way. But I say to people, I say, if you've got an RTD canned drink. That's an energy drink. Okay, cool. Well, then go and look at an energy drink in one of the supermarkets, turn it around and look at their format. Now, that's the
mm,
the template and the format is there. The information now is specific to your product.
mm,
And you then need to go to a company who will be able to test for those things. So, you produce your so again, that's the one thing, you produce your product and you'll send your product away and go, okay, we'll test it for shelf life for me.
mm.
And then can you test it for nutritionals and break it down for me in my table? And for allergens and all of that good stuff. So it's a lot of work. And this is, it's a lot of work. And if you don't have the access and the investment, it's going to be tough to jump in at the top of the mountain.
To be fair, I did. I looked at like the Walker's Woods, the Duns River,
Mm,
but it's even then it was like I knew like about the salt content, sugar content, and like that. But the microbiological testing, I only found out for when I went to that food manufacturer that I paid.
yeah.
They were allowed to get me in front of. And
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to be careful
mm,
with some of the imported products as well because there's different legislation. So again,
mm,
if you got to a point where you wanted to export to America or something like that,
mm,
it's very difficult getting American products in to the UK from a food perspective because the way that they label is non-compliant. So you
mm,
have to have someone who's going to bring it in and over-label it, or you have to have somebody on the other side of the pond who's happy to say, "Don't worry, we'll just do a whole new set of packaging or labeling for the UK market," which is, depending on the product, usually quite difficult because when you're producing your product, that information is already on the packaging rather than
mm.
having blank packaging and just having labels that you're stickering over. So there's all of these little
Yeah.
intricacies, these little
Mm,
different pieces of information. It's like, well, that's got to add up and this has got to add up. And that's, it blew my mind how challenging it is to be a food brand. So and again, that's why I was always happy to give time because I look at you guys and go, what you guys are doing is not easy at all. So I
no,
salute.
no.
And if there's any information I can share to help you on your journey, without telling too many tricks of the trade, then
Yeah, yeah, because the salsa thing, I thought I had it because the light industrial unit that I went to in Portsmouth, they had the salsa, so I thought, yeah, that's it. Like I
Mm,
said, because I had such a well, not easy, but after 1 year of searching around and I contacted this person I said buy a takeaway from, had the background and he was trying to get his Oriental sauce, the Asian sauce, so into these places and said, oh look, we'll bring you in if you give us that fee. And
mm,
he did, and I thought, bro, it's look, how am I selling thing when I'm like a basic a starter?
mm,
And people said, how you think get that? I said, to be fair, it's like the grace of God. I said, I was trying and working hard and it just arrived to me. It's like the
mm.
stars aligned. Yeah. I did
But
not.
that's what they do sometimes. 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I can see why some people, when they do that spiritual thing about, oh yeah, sometimes it's not, how you're working and that it's whether it's destined for you and things like that.
Well, do you know, yeah,
I've
I mean,
become a big believer of stuff like that still.
I'm a big believer, but I'm also a big believer of. I think we all get messages, and I think we all got some guidance. I think it's being able to be in a space where you can understand it and be open to it, um, and realize that it is a moment, it is a blessing, it is something that's actually this could shift the dial on me. And I don't think there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily that in tune to it, and might
Mm,
just pass it off as I don't want to do it in the choice. But do you stop? Do you think? Do you reflect? Do you understand? Is
yeah.
this what can this do for me, or actually is this worth my time and my energy? So yeah, I'm a huge believer in that for sure.
That's
For
the only
sure.
thing. It's not precise science though. So I said, how come it's not happening for me this time? But she said,
Uh-huh.
like, see, when I went to be fair, my wife met Colin first.
Yeah.
And I think, look, I've hit a plateau. I'm going back to selling off my website and just people I know after I had a
Mm.
manufacturer and selling 500 units a week. I said, Jesus. I said, I have to still be doing my day job that I said I want to come out of.
Mm.
And I said, some people say, oh, you should commit to it full time. I said, no, I've got children. There's nowhere until this
Mm.
thing. I know it's not going to be hill and gully up and down like a roller
Mm.
coaster. I need a certain level that it doesn't drop beneath. And I said, I'm not there yet, so I'm not going to do that. And they think, oh, well, you don't really believe. And I said, see. I said, why can't I have another touch like that? I said,
Yeah, but
yeah,
you know what? No,
mm,
but again,
mm,
that would be the challenge. What is the lesson within that? What is the lesson within that? I guess the question would be, well, how do you make it work
mm,
in a way that's going to be more sustainable, knowing that you still have
mm,
to maintain for your family? Again, my vibe is I'm always of the mindset that there's a solution, and sometimes that solution presents itself longer than we would like it to.
I
But
agree, I agree, I agree.
okay, what's the lesson? I mean, what is wrong with selling 500 units of work and still having a job? I don't see the challenge with that. I mean, it's funny you should say that because I've been watching a lot of the interviews about the Dame Dash on Breakfast Club and
Mm,
seeing some of the fallout about that and that whole being a boss versus having a job type thing. And it's
yeah.
like, well, what one of the guys from the Breakfast Club, I saw an interview with him, and he made it a valid point, which is like, well, hold on, you can be an employee and a boss at the same time, until that moment that you're ready to be a boss surpasses being an employee. So there's lots of different avenues and lots of different ways um, to reach the promised land, I believe. And
Yeah, there is, there is. I agree,
yeah,
I
and I,
agree,
and
I
I
agree.
believe And again, I believe I go back to my point, that question, I ask myself this question a lot, I ask my children this question a lot. We make a decision, scale of 1 to 10. How much are
Mm,
you willing to suffer for this?
yeah,
Because you could again, every if you're going to dedicate every other moment that you still have the energy outside of your work and outside of committing to your family to just that purpose,
yeah.
then I believe you've got a larger chance of being able to get to the promised land. But do we want to do that, or do we want to watch the football, or do we want to chill and do you understand what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
So
of course.
there's
Yeah, definitely. I've been through there many times, many
mm,
times. I've been there many times. It's true. It's true.
mm. So,
It's,
yeah,
that's a serious, it's a
that's
serious
just my
decision.
vibe and my view on it anyway.
No,
So
no, that's the truth. No, to be fair, that is the truth because I've seen it when I've been lapsed and I think, kind of going through the motions. Said, do you really want it, Sean? Same with when I used to play semi-pro football. When I thought I'm 19 now, I'm not gonna make top level, and I kind of wouldn't travel no more. Said, I'm not traveling if I'm not driving. I said, I'm not playing the reserves, not getting paid. I only playing first games. And then, where before I used to kick the ball, do kick ups in the snow, but on my own, train them on and said, yeah, but really like, yes, Sean Begay for Chelsea.
mm.
And then I'll be like, I'm not doing that no more. I've got a little girlfriend, part-time job, sorting letters at the post office. That's it. Obviously, the hunger weren't really there. The belief weren't really there again. So,
Yeah, well,
mm,
yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to comment on that because you know that it's your story, but it is
mm,
that vibe of are you willing to suffer for it? And
mm,
you can see that in that's I like to connect the dots for successful people. No, I don't know, successful celebrity people who made a lot of money or they've got to and particularly in sports. And I like to connect the dots of the one thing that's very consistent between what they will say and like discipline's the big one. That
yeah, I've been
ability
troubled
to
that.
that ability to do things when you don't want to do it. That ability to like going to the gym. I don't want to work out today. But even if you go and you had a 75% workout, it's better than not having no
Another
work.
thing, yeah, yeah,
So you get something done. So
mm,
that discipline is very important and in all areas of life. But again,
mm,
it's if you really want to excel, the one thing that I understand, I'm hearing about people, weren't sleeping at 1 hour sleep, they're working around the clock, they're running to this meeting, but they're doing it because they know they have to get things done and they have a discipline which is, linked to their belief.
mm,
And, what's fascinating about that is, when you don't have the motivation to create the motivation.
mm.
And that's I think a lot of people um I think it's a challenge for a lot of people because
Yeah, it is. I think
life,
that's the biggest one because
yeah, but
some we have different capacities though. Because it's like when I used to do a bit of boxing and that. And I said, like one of my friends said, how comes some of them things they seem so easy? I said, yeah, because obviously the base level is higher than yours, and
mm,
they upset him. I said, it is though. It's just like I said, certain things you can do, I could try and think, and I could never do that.
mm.
And he said it's just one of those things. So I think because of that, people get disheartened. They get disheartened.
Yeah, they could, and
Because I've seen
again,
people dedicate themselves and still don't make it.
for sure, no, for
And
sure,
that's why
and well,
people have them doubts and they don't push themselves as much because they said, well, if I spend all this energy, put my heart and soul in, and it fails. And I think
yeah,
that
but
breaks a lot of people.
you're absolutely right. But again, that is another very fundamental point where when you
Mm,
think about, if you ask someone who's won how many times they've lost,
mm,
I think a lot of people would be surprised by the answer. Because
mm,
you have to take some L's on the way. You have to take some, and again, that goes back to my point and that question around suffering is like, you're going to have to suffer to get there, but there's something quite beautiful about suffering because there's so many lessons. Like, you know, and I say suffering very loosely, obviously. I don't want anyone to suffer as in like torture suffer. So for those listening, that's not what I
mm,
mean by that.
mhm,
But I mean that discipline, that hard work. I mean that, you know what, as you say, I got a 9 to 5, so and then I've got to take my kid to football practice after, so I'm gonna have to get up at 6 o'clock to squeeze in an
mm,
hour and a half of this work I need to do every day. I'm up at 6, getting it done, or I'm staying up till 12, 1, whether you're a night owl or whatever it is. Like, are you prepared to do that? Are you prepared to go, this didn't work this time, and then sit back and reflect, okay, so what didn't go so well? Why didn't it go so well? How can I
mm,
improve it? What do I need to tweak and make those adjustments to come back stronger? Are you taking
mm,
that on board rather than, it didn't work, let it go?
mm,
If you
mm,
believe it, and if you say you're willing to suffer between
mm,
7.5 and a 10 for it, every
mm.
time you come to that buyer and go and he says no, be like, all right, can you tell me why? This is why. Okay, cool. I'll take that feedback on board. Why did they not want it? Why didn't that happen for me? And on the
Mm,
flip side, why are they taking it? Why are these taking it? And how can I combine this? And
mm,
how can I keep working at it? And
mm,
but again, well, this is why I started with that whole point in terms of foundation and environment. If your environment has set you up to handle those challenges, you'll be much more
mm,
well equipped. And this is where that having that strong foundation has been so beneficial to me. Um,
mm.
because I sit here and we got there, but it was hard. It wasn't easy, you know.
You know, I think the
And
why as well, the why and the character inside, because it's like I used to tell people, it's like I used to read in the Bible, fun enough, when they said the virgins that kept the oil in
mm,
their lamp burning, for when
mm,
the bridegroom arrived, yeah, and
mm,
Capering as well when he used to say keep the fire burning.
mm,
So when I said to my friend, I said, see, it's like a storm in a teacup. And then
mm,
there's the perfect storm. He said, you got the steam engine, where the man
mm,
used to be on the ship, and I said, see them stoking it
mm.
hour after hour, throwing the coal in there.
Yeah.
I said, geez, a non-stop in harsh environment. Some people said, nah, that's not for me, Rasta. That's not for me.
Mm.
I'm not going to do that. So that's why them man are in there, in the engine
There
room.
you go. There you go.
They keep the fire
100%.
burning.
Absolutely. And and do you have that? So yeah, it's a lot, but there's ways, and there's great brands out there doing great things. And like I say, if that's the vibe that that people, if that's really your vibe and your thing, then stick at it, and something good will come out at some point. And I think also as well is at what point do what that vision I talk about is what does success actually look like? Because again, success might be 500 units every week on top of your salary until your children get older. They got their own jobs, and now that 500 has been invested and
Mm.
interest is rolls and it's stacked and it's different. And that's the other question I like to ask. How long are you prepared to wait? If you knew it was going to pop off and it was going to work in 20 years' time, but it was only going to work in 20 years' time.
Yeah, I still do, definitely.
Okay.
If you gave me a vision, like as a revelation,
Yeah.
sure,
In
in
20 years' time,
2045, you think.
if you keep
Mm,
sticking at it,
mm,
highs and lows, like
mm.
you'll get there, but now, but it's only going to happen 2045,
Five.
17th of October,
Mm,
2045, it will happen. Are you still going to stick at it through the highs and the lows? And you'll be surprised how many people go, 20 years. And I'm like, okay, well, that feels like a long time, and it does.
yeah,
But
for me, I'll be a pensioner by then, almost. Jeez. Yeah.
no, but yeah, I get it, and it's a hypothetical, but it's
Mm,
just trying to get people to think like how invested in this am I? And then, but then we tend to get people say, I could do 3 years if I knew it was going to be 3 years and 5 years. Like, oh, cool. Well, 3 years. Well, now you got 3 years. Off you go. Do
mm,
you understand what I'm saying? It's just a way of opening up your mind to go, oh yeah, this could take longer than next week, or by the end of the year, I expect to start making a profit. Because
mm.
as we know, it's like, a lot of businesses, startups will go 2, 3, 4, 5 years without turning a
I have
profit.
to admit, with me, because again, I was spoiled with that. When I first started selling it, obviously out of my own kitchen, and people used to buy it. I never used to ask them. I said, "Oh, just try this," and then I noticed some people started to give me money. And when I
Mm,
was shocked when it's one, well, I remember a few people used to give me £10. I said, huh?
mm,
I said, bit much. I said, yeah, just take it. I was shocked.
mm.
But then when they heard I got a manufacturer now, I noticed them saying people used to buy from me. Said their thing, they didn't want the thing anymore. So yeah, so it was when I was just thinking it's all right. So I was kind of spoiled. And then even then for the manufacturer, I used to make about 27 pence per jar. So I said that's all right. I'm not
Mm.
at least I'm not losing money, even though
Yeah,
it's pennies for the guide. But yeah, so I
all
got thing
good to
with that. And
get
then
done.
when I started to approach kind of independent shops like the delis, the farmers market, and they said, "Oh well, what's your margin?" I said, "Roughly about 20%." He said, "No, well, if you come with us, that will be gone." So I said, "Yeah, I'm
Mm,
not looking to run a hobby. I'm not going to take a hit to be doing all that to not make one penny." I
mm,
said, "I've got too much responsibilities for that, mate." So I said, "I'll just wait for another opportunity. I'm not
mm,
that desperate to get in." So I said, I'll look elsewhere. There might be another route."
mm,
Someone said, "No, no, that's not the right attitude to have, Sean." I said, "Well," said it's not. It doesn't make sense. Why would I go from starting always making at least 20% on my seasoning, at
mm,
least, to be saying no, you think just to say I'm
mm.
in a place where I've got more exposure,
Yeah,
and there's no guarantees that I'll be able to increase it and be able to make the margin to survive. I said that's a recipe for disaster. That's like me having an expensive hobby. I said I already got like one like that with football. So, yeah, so it is. But I remember not all food buyers are like you, Mr. Boswell. Not all food buyers are like
I think, do you know, you're absolutely right. And again, there was a guy, there's a guy in the cheese industry. This is a funny story. It's funny you just said it. This guy that all these funny moments, and this is what I'm saying. I went to a trade show once, and the same guy that got me into buying. One thing he always say to me is like never wear your name badge. So, and I was like, why? And he's like, because if they see you work for, then everyone comes at you. So I'm like, cool, whatever. So I went wearing my name badge, and I saw one of the guys from the G. He's like, you're not wearing your name badge, but it doesn't matter. Everyone knows who you are. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, really? And in that moment, again, just that
mm.
open banter, it was like, yeah, cool. I'm one of a few black players in this field. It's like the name badge doesn't really make a difference anymore, does it? It's like, and from that moment, I mean, I still don't wear it, but it's like, you know, and he was like, people used to ask me, like, oh, who's that guy from there? And he's like, oh, the black guy. Yeah, and very open and very free about it. So it's been a lonely space for a while. There was another guy that was at M&S, who we connected with a guy called Godfrey, but we connected very late as he was starting to leave there. He's doing his own thing now. Shout out Godfrey. He was a very good guy, and he worked up in M&S, and he worked the ranks. But yeah, I think there's not a lot of buyers like me because culturally it's a different fit, you know.
Mm,
And like I say, it's the way I've approached the role isn't about ego. I've never had like the whole. It still surprises me that the title thing. Like,
mm,
are you a buyer? And I'm like, that's a job. It's great. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not downplaying it. Because like I said, I've worked very hard to get where I'm at, but that doesn't mean that I should treat anybody as as less of a person or not have time for people because
mm,
of the job. And it's that as I rose the ranks, balancing the time of still being able to try and I am passionate about helping people. I do enjoy that. I do enjoy sharing information and seeing people win.
mm,
That's for some reason that that I find some joy in that. Um, but yeah, I think the difference is just the mindset, just cultural environment where I come from, and understanding that um, I've always said to my team that it doesn't really matter what we sell. Um, we're in the business of people,
of
so to
course,
speak.
definitely.
It's the people behind the product. So I've always had that approach, and I think that's why um, that the reputation that I have of being very different in not just ethnicity, but just different in approach. I think it stems from that. That would be my view.
Yeah, so with going forward, specifically yourself, do you have like an overall vision of what you like to see, like say, for fast moving consumer goods retailers
Um,
trying to, as from especially from our community, what do you
do you
feel
know what?
like as a collective that stops us from reaching the heights of, like, say, like say
Well,
like someone like Levi Roos, why can't we have more people like that within the industry? Is it because of the knowledge
because
or the lack of
well, again,
effort?
because I don't want to talk too much without too much knowledge, but I understand obviously you had the Dragons Den thing go through
Of
and
course, that helps.
the investment, and again that access allows for certain things to happen. And again, credit to him, well done to him. He's doing his thing. What do we need? I think we need we do need more people like Colin doing this thing and bringing us together. We do need
Fun
more
enough, there's
community.
Jamie, you know Jamie, don't you? Jamie.
Yeah. I've done a
Yeah.
couple of events with Jamie. You need the likes of Jamie, yeah, and obviously Carly are doing great things. I think she's at Lloyd's TSB now. She
I tried
managed.
to connect those two still. I tried
Yeah,
to connect those two.
but she's doing great things in that space now, getting adverts for the community on Channel 4. But again, that's
Mm,
still at a level which is speaking to the supermarkets, which is
mm,
cool.
mm.
Um, but the world of food is vast,
Yeah, of course it
and
is. It is.
I think a lot of people always look at retailers as the promised land when there's a lot of volume elsewhere. So, like, my view would be, as it is, just in general, to be honest with you, I think if we can create communities, if we can create safe spaces for conversation, for like-minded individuals to come together. And all right, let me say it as simple as this. Instead of asking for a seat at the table, creating our own table.
Yeah, I believe in that. I believe in that. But
That
the
that would
mindset that's very rare. That's a very rare mindset I've discovered in my walk of life.
yeah. It is a rare mindset because you know why? Because creating table takes a long time.
Yeah,
And if you create a table, that table might be created, but you might not be able to reap the benefits of it.
yeah, of course, yeah,
Do you
definitely,
understand? So
yeah.
I'm of again, I I I I'm just happy to be part of a community that thinks in a way of, we over me, that
Mm,
and I think that's where our power lies.
of
So
course.
that, yeah, the more we can get together, the more we can, we can and we can share whatever resources we have and build platforms ourselves. And there's another guy called Nathaniel, I believe. He's got Wakuda, which is, I think it's just an online only business for black businesses and stuff like that. So there are people doing things, but how do we connect the dots? How do we come together? How do we do something more meaningful? And I don't want to say create a movement, but create that word community, create a community where we can all support each other in one way or another. You know?
What of the barriers have you noticed with that? Because in my experience, but there always seems to be like some kind of they don't share the same kind of values or they're at different parts of the journey. Then in other areas, some people say I can tell it's a trust issue. Then some people think, oh well, are you that serious? I'm more serious than you. That's always seems to be the subtext. What I've
It's
noticed. Then
I look,
worried about people being, they're being frauds and they're just
I
trying to use people. So I know
yeah,
a lot of that seems to be thing that is the barrier that prevents from the real connection and the
I
collective.
yeah, sure. I mean, it's a good question, and the only way I can answer it is by throwing the question back to you and saying, well, just in general, what are the barriers we face as a people across the globe, not just in the
Mm,
UK, in the States, even in Africa? What are the barriers we have to coming together, full stop? What are those barriers?
mm,
And I think the same barriers that we have on a global scale are the same barriers that we have at a local scale.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree. I
And
agree.
this is why the point I make is, it's how do we create communities of like-minded people who have a similar sort of energy and approach it in a similar way. And again, that again, I always talk about vibes and tribes. And unfortunately, it would be great if all of us could just come together. The world would be utopia, right? But
Yeah,
that's not
exactly, exactly.
that's not the reality. So the reality is, okay, well, who are the people that who have a shared energy, who have alignment, um, and how do we move forward together and without, trying to be dictated to, but just doing it with good, authentic energy. And again, I can't answer. I don't have the answers for why some people are not connecting. But the other flip, everyone's very busy right now. It's a crazy world at the moment as well. So again, I say that from a place of um, that would be a vision I have in terms of.
Yeah, that's been my vision since a teenager, but I still not realized it. Mm,
Well, I mean, but again,
mm,
and that's a challenge back to me. It's like it's great that I had that vision, and the challenge back to
mm,
myself. I asked the question. I said, "Well, what have you done to try and overcome that?" And if I'm being
mm,
honest with myself, I've been like, "No, I've been busy at work. I've been raising my family. I've been trying to do this, and
mm,
that's the reality of it. That's the
mm,
answer I have. Yeah, it's a vision, but I haven't done anything to try and change that. I haven't made. No, let me take that back. I'm not saying I haven't changed it. I mean, I've been vocal about it. And like I said, I come on your platform. If you asked, I go on Colin's platform. He asks,
mm.
in the community reach out. I do my best to provide time and these types of things. But in terms of actually action of like, let's get together and do this and have a conversation to fresh out and see what it looks like. I haven't done that. So it's easy for me to sit up and say that's what we should do,
Mm.
but I'm not even doing it myself.
Funny
So
enough, would you be willing to do that though? Would you be willing to do that? Because that's to be fair, that's why I kind of set up Equal Start because my friend
um,
he said, group
look,
economics, Sean. You need to be
absolutely.
out there more often. So yeah, it's busy, but I said, yeah, just try, just even if it's once a month or twice a month.
I'm
Mm,
as with today. I'm happy to have conversations about. how we can move forward as a community and a collective, and how we can grow that in a way that holds true to who we are as people and our culture. Absolutely, yeah. I would
Mm.
never say no to that for sure. So if that's something that equals start trying to do, and they want to get people around the table to
Yeah, yeah,
spark a
definitely, definitely,
conversation.
yeah, definitely,
Okay,
definitely.
let's spark a conversation. Let's see, what does this look like? What we're trying to achieve? How do we want to go about it? I don't necessarily have any
Mm.
problem with that at all.
Yeah, yeah, it's key, it's key. Because otherwise, what I've noticed is my parents complained about it in the 80s and 90s, not the 2010s when I was a young man.
Mm,
This thing, there's still the same. Said, why are we having these things? We've been here for how many decades, and we're still having these kind of issues. Where you think
mm,
naturally we just progress. Obviously, it's individuals have, but as a collective,
mm.
when it comes to social economics, the scales, the metrics, we're still suffering, and we've got brighter people than ever. We have the internet, the World Wide Web. We have more connectivity and more opportunities than ever, and yet we're still not grasping them. And there seems to be like an invisible barrier that stops us from making the progress. I know some of it is
Yeah,
mental health as well, and obviously personal
yeah.
problems that stop people as well. Mm.
My view is my view is always is we have a choice. So external factors will be external factors, but we have a choice to change that. And
Mm.
the change starts with us. That's like my view is that the change starts with us. So, when we have the moments where we say no, no more, and we're going to come, we're good at coming together and
Yeah, for
um,
socializing parties should be.
socializing and in a
Mm,
crisis,
mm,
we're good at those. George Floyd, showed the world that actually, when something that
mm.
visual happens, that we can pull together and we can make change. But it's again, how do you continue that momentum? When
It's
you
funny
now
you
got
mentioned
what?
that. You see, with did anything change where you was working before with when it like with DEI? Because I noticed they talked about building back across the Western world then, but since the
Yeah,
change in
yeah.
politics, it seems to be like no, we're going back to how things were. We had enough of this. Someone told me
Uh,
the other day it's black fatigue. I was shocked and full
well,
of truth as well.
yeah. I mean, I would say I've seen some of those comments around companies reducing their DE&I and
There's
asset
plenty.
ownership.
Mm,
Again, I'm blessed and fortunate enough to be in a space where they haven't. They've ramped it up and they've built communities within that. And I would say, it's as strong as it has been, if not the strongest it has been in 20 plus years I've been around, which
mhm.
is quite unique, I think, as well. But again, I think it's because of the type of organization that it is. Um, again, I I think the I think the what am I trying to say here? What I'm trying to say is that momentum that we had, what did we do to continue it ourselves?
Mm.
Because it felt like a lot of the momentum was on you need to do this for us,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yes, yes, yes.
And
Yes.
again, I'm back to,
We'll do
whatever
for
that we
more
all
for
have a
ourselves.
choice. We all have a choice, and
Mm.
we will have to have an intention, and we will have to try and align our choices and our intentions. And if our intentions are to build a stronger community and to move us forward and empower us, then we have to get around the table and we have to start looking at how can we make what changes can we make, no matter big or small. And look, and I'm not saying that like there's so many different companies out there doing great things, so many individuals doing great things. But to
Mm.
your point, you're right. It still feels it doesn't feel like it's a collective
Yeah, it's
movement. It feels
disjointed
like
and operating in silos.
lots of little silos. So, but maybe that's the first start. Maybe that's the
Yeah,
start.
it's a start. It's better than nothing.
Maybe that's the start. Maybe you start with the silos and everybody's building their thing, and then you put your head up and go, "Oh, look at all of these people that have built this. How
Mm.
can we get us all together and now we can do something meaningful?" So again, there's phases and stages to development, I believe, and I think it's just another phase. But I do believe there's definitely more opportunity. The barriers they're not going to go away, but there's still ways to achieve within.
Mm.
within whatever's been set. And I still think it's there for the taking, but only if we want to do that.
And how do you think how would you go about setting it up to say for your sector to have more say
Well,
black
it's
people, business
difficult because
people come through?
there's not many in the sector.
Mm.
There's like it's and when you say the food industry, are we looking at it from there's there isn't many of us represented in certain spaces at this point. So you could start with the people who are,
Hmm.
for sure, and say, what does that look like? But I'm, I think it's less specific to one sector, and I think it's on the level of how do we do something which benefits a variety of sectors? Because what you'll find is there's a lot more people with access and influence and power in a variety of other sectors than there
Mm.
is specifically within food.
Mm.
And even though food plays a huge part of it, or FMCG or whatever you want to call it, it's there are a lot of people with influential roles from our community in different places. It's finding those people and putting them together, you
Mm.
know. So I mean, look, I would say, how would I start? I start by coming on your platform and sharing my views and saying that I'm open to having a conversation. If there's if a like-minded person is listening to this and says, actually, that sounds okay, and they decide they want to reach out via you and say, well, let's have a conversation to see what that might look like and what expectations we can set and all that sort of stuff. Okay, let's chop it up.
Mm. Yeah, funny enough, you said that part of it was a black business network. And when I went to the last food source media event in July, I think just before my birthday, and they asked me, "Oh, you never told us about that?" I said, "Yes, I did. When I joined in March,
Mm,
I advertised it every week. I'd put the PDF or the posters that
mm,
Colin used to use for his Instagram, put that in
mm,
there. No one was showed interest.
mm,
And then I've been the first few months. I went to a lot of the Tuesday meetings, even though sometimes I'd have the kids with me in it,
mm,
but I'd have the Zoom on my phone. I said, "You lot never showed interest." It's only when he saw the socials when I was there with my wife and she had her teas and everything. And she was putting her on
mm.
the front cover of the magazine. Colin put her on there. Yeah. And they saw, is it Patrick Wright was there? All of a
Oh
sudden,
yeah, yeah,
oh,
yeah.
yes, I should think. And I said, yeah, but that's after the fact. So you
Mm,
only want to see some form of success first before, or perceived success before you want to get involved. That's where it's bad. No one wants to dig the foundation. No one wants to dig the ground. Mm,
Yeah, I hear that. Do you know what? I hear that, and it's a valid point. But I'll be honest with you again. That's one of the things we look for. That goes back to the point I was
mm,
making earlier about building your vibe and building your tribe, which again is a very
mm,
difficult thing to do.
mm,
But you've got to have put in something. That's just the game. Like
mm,
the first thing people ask is, okay, well, show me what you got with or your website or what's your socials or let me see what you are
mm,
doing. And it's a very sort of visual and digitally interactive kind of world that we're living in now. And yeah, to your point, I think, there are a large amount of people that want to see some form of progress before they want to sit down and go to the table. And
mm, mm,
and look,
mm,
that's everyone's well within their rights to maneuver the way they want to maneuver. Some people will, some people won't, and they're done. So it's just again how do you navigate that? How do you understand that? How do you take that feedback on board? How do you navigate that, and then how do you apply it to whatever scenario that you're in?
Well, he had a legitimate. I showed them the previous events,
Mm,
but like I said, when I saw my wife on the front of the magazine, because it's not. It's not like I said, look, I just got a empty table with no tablecloth, and the environment is all chock a block, and when the tables out on the street. They said
mm,
it's not like that. You've seen these, you've got events beforehand,
mm,
and he was like, "Oh no," I said, "I know there's a lot of people opinion in there." Said, "Oh, come and use my services," but I said, "Obviously, to get you must contribute. If we're building like a network." Surely fee must think we support one another's endeavors. Some
mm,
seems to only want to come in, make a quick buck and duck off. And
mm,
then so then you complain about where's the connectivity, where's the sustainability? So because obviously people want to give and then people want to take. And then there's some people don't want to reciprocate. So I said this is another thing that seems to be a problem.
Yeah, it is a problem. But again, that's where I go back to the point of the when I talk about again vibes and tribes, and when you're sitting down and starting the conversation is like, does the energy align? Like, are the conversations that authentic? So we know exactly, okay, yeah, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that. I can commit to this, I cannot commit to that. It's like, what is the depth of the conversation? If it's got to start with a conversation rather than an expectation, that would be my vibe.
Mm,
And what I like about conversations, I love difficult conversations because yes, sometimes they'd be uncomfortable,
exactly.
but you get clarity, and
Yeah, you do get clarity, definitely.
and
You know
you
who
know,
is who.
I'd rather sit down around the table two, three times and figure out, you know what, we we we're not fully aligned, and maybe we can align on this, and something over here can work,
Mm,
but that vibe isn't going to work for us. So then everyone goes, okay, we know where we're at.
definitely.
Rather than you hear people, say certain things and have a little bit of a sound bite, and then you go, oh, I think they're kind of on the same thing. But when you dig deeper, when you question deeper, when when you start to probe a little bit more, then we understand exactly where is your energy sitting, and does that actually align with what we're trying to achieve over here. And that's that's what it is for me. So I think yeah, I think there's opportunity for us as a community. We're very creative. We do know good flavor,
Definitely.
and we know that our cuisines, our foods, our drinks, and flavors we can put together, then they are, people are receptive to them. The world, we do have an audience for them. So we just, yeah, again, it starts with us. We just have to get our house in order and
True.
see what that looks
True.
like, and organize, and yeah, and come to the table, fully prepared, or as prepared as can be.
Mm. All right. Well, on that note, thank you for coming on today, Mr. Boswell.
No,
And
thank you for
hopefully, I'm
having
going to be
me.
in touch with you soon, actually.
Yeah, no,
Um,
look, thanks for having me. Like I said, we were doing CICs are great supporting communities and helping them. I've been looking at some of your stuff obviously before I come on, and the conversations are good. It's powerful. It's uplifting. And yeah, that's really my vibe. So I hope it was
very
beneficial for
informative.
you.
Very
And
informative. And that's another episode of Unheralded Heroes. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Where there are people, there is power. Justice in our time.